Hey, and welcome back to our second in this series of I believe it's 6 games around text-based adventures. Today's game is going to be Eamon. Eamon is a follow-up to the last game we did, Oregon Trail, in that they are both text-based adventures. Oregon Trail, yes, it had a few images along with the songs that we saw, but for all intents and purposes, that was a text-based game. What you'll see as far as the evolution of text-based games from Oregon Trail is that Eamon supports actual words that you can type in. So Oregon Trail had a menu system of usually between 1 and 9 that you could enter, and the game would do something based on your selection. Eamon allows you to type in words. The Eamon games typically support between 40 and 50 different words. The language is pretty rudimentary. It's usually like get sword, open box, things like that. But it is a step up from what you could do in Oregon Trail. Where we're going next after this one, and that's one of the great benefits of doing a historical look back at games, is you can put all these back in order in which they came out from historical context and watch the evolution of abilities like this. The next one we're going to look at is The Hobbit. Now, the Hobbit parser is actually pretty good. It supports up to about 500 words. You can use adjectives and adverbs, very exciting, as well as the word and, so you get more than one thing done in a command. So that is pretty interesting. Again, it's a little bit limited, but the parser itself does allow you to do more than what you'll see here in Eamon. From there, then it really grows exponentially as we go into Zork, Planetfall, and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So you'll see over the next few games is the ability for text-based adventures to get much more refined, and as we get into the latter ones, some great variation on what you can actually do. But that's in the future. Today, let's go ahead and play Eamon. Obviously, we're still on the Apple IIe, so we've got our floppy disk. Go ahead and pop that in. Turn on the monitor, and crank it up. Ah, the lovely sounds of the Apple II. So Eamon, as I said, is a turn and text-based adventure game where you can go through a dungeon, slay creatures, collect treasure, and have a great time. Most of the Eamons are fantasy and dungeon-based, but one of the great things that Don Brown did was not only create just a game, he created an entire system and an engine for users to create their own content. So if you think about most modern games now, where you can have users generating their own maps, creating their own add-ons to games, this was one of the earliest ones that allowed for that. So he published not only the game, but the books on how to create the data files to create new dungeons and walkthroughs, and released everything at the same time. This was all mostly non-commercial, although some services did charge between $5 and $7 for a disc to copy some of the games. So there's that, but now everything is out in the open and free to use. And over time, I believe there were well over 250 different Eamons created. And the great thing about the engine is, even though most of them are of the dungeon style, it did not require you to be dungeon-based. So the language in the parser allows you to do almost anything you wanted. So there were some Eamons created for some wildly different genres, including a Star Wars-based one. So if you wanted to go fly the Millennium Falcon and save Princess Leia, there's an option for that as well. So that was one of the great things about this game, is the user-generated content style of this. This is one of the earliest ones that you'll find, and then obviously this thread has grown greatly in more recent games. But it's fun to look back and see where it all kind of started. So the game itself is fun to play. It does have a lot of great humor built into it. So Don Brown must have had a really dry sense of humor, and you'll see that in some of the text that comes through. As far as challenges around this game, probably one of the biggest things about this game is how it handles death. Much like in real life, death is a one-time affair. So if you have a character that you like, you go off on some adventures, get some great equipment, and then you face something you just can't beat, or you just die, well, you're dead, and the character, all of its equipment are gone. So whatever you had built up to that point, you have to start over from the beginning and start with an empty character. So that leads to defensive gameplay, which I'm not a big fan of. I mean, most of these are hack and slash affairs, so it's fun to hack and slash. But if you know that once you're dead, and you have to start over with an empty character at the very beginning, it's a little bit less fun. But you know, as long as you know that going in, that's okay. It could be a turnoff to newer users. Obviously, most games, most modern games, get around this by having save files, and so you can save throughout most of your adventures. And if you get to a particularly hairy spot, you save before you go into it, you try it, see what works, what doesn't, restart, and do it again until you get through. That's not an option here. I don't know if it's just because the discs didn't have that much space to store the state, but that's just the style. So if you want to play this game, keep that in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is death traps. So throughout most of the games, there's at least 1 or 2 instant death traps, where if you walk into it, there's literally nothing you can do because you're already dead by the time you get done reading it. So most of them do have warning signs, so it's not like you can just wander in aimlessly and accidentally doing something. So most of them have a sign that says, keep out, danger, do not enter, something along those lines. And so you pretty much have to follow directions. And what you'll see at the very beginning of the game, before we actually even start, is an example of that. So we have an option here to go to the desk and set our character up, or go drink beer with the men. Who doesn't like drinking beer with men? So let's go ahead and try that. Oh look, the game's over. So it does tell you right up front, you got to follow directions. You might be tempted to go into something that says do not enter, but this game tells you right up front, follow the directions, and you'll be much better for it. Let's go ahead and restart this up. So as a dungeon adventure, the game itself has this central hub, which we're going to go to first. It's a beer hall, but also has a store, a local wizard you can learn some spells from. And once you get kitted out and get your character created, then you can go out on adventures. The main disc itself has a beginner's cave, so it's got a very short adventure to go out, and that way that you can experience how Eamon works before you go out onto some of the larger quests. So what we'll see, go ahead and go to the desk and set our character up. You do get to put your name in here, so I've been playing this game a fair bit, so we'll go ahead, OP8. Yes, that is really my name. So as I said, this is a Dungeons and Dragons style game, and if you've ever played D&D, obviously one of the first things you do when you create a character is you roll a bunch of D6s to get the scores for your various abilities. That same style comes through in this game as well. So much like in D&D where you pick a race and a gender and a type of adventurer, we're going to do the same thing here, but the choices are a little bit more limited. So we'll be a male, and what happens is instead of rolling 3 d6s like you would in D&D, you're actually rolling 3 d8s. So the values for hardiness, agility, and charisma go from 3 to 24. And if the rolls are really bad, because obviously bigger numbers are better, it'll allow you to, in the game's words, commit suicide and start over again. So hardiness is the amount of damage that you can take before you're dead. Agility is your ability to miss hits as well as hit somebody else. And then charisma is a score that determines how you relate to other non-playing characters. This comes in most use where you're going to buy things. So if you have a higher than average charisma, the price for your equipment at the store or the spells is going to be lower. This is really crucial for beginning characters, because if you have a low charisma, so if we went ahead and kept this character, the price for everything would be exorbitant. We'd be lucky to get out of here with a shield and a sword. Whereas if you have a very high charisma, you can actually get full plate mail, a better than average sword, and a shield on your way out the door. So we'll go ahead and see if we can spin up a better one. This is actually a quite interesting one. Hardiness is medium, agility is super low, but charisma is high. So we'll be able to buy a lot of things, just not do much with it. So let's go ahead and take a peek at the directions. So with each of the 5 classes of weapons has a score associated with it. And this is basically your ability to do damage, or actually hit and do damage to another creature. Clubs and maces are easiest to use because they have the 20% bonus modifier, because you basically pick something up and you swing it. There's not much skill involved. But what you'll see is that they do less damage. So you've got that trade-off until you get up to a sword, which we're at a neutral 0, and then a bow. Bows, if you've ever used a real bow in real life, it's kind of hard to hit the bullseye on your very first time, and that's why we see a negative modifier here. But it does allow you to stand back out of range from most of the creatures, so you get hit less. But obviously, bows are kind of hard to use. So if you really want to specialize in bow, pick one up and spend all your time there, because that score will get better with use. But for today, I think we're going to go ahead and pick the sword. Same thing on the armor. So plate mail, obviously you can see has more hits it can take, but it has the negative adjustment because plate mail is actually hard and heavy to carry. The more times you get hit, the easier it gets to use. So there's that trade-off there. Let's see. And here's it gets back with the hard instant before you can die, and the other information I talked about. So we have a pretty high charisma, and therefore the prices are a lot cheaper. There are some magic spells that you can learn. For this walkthrough, the most we'll probably get to is Heal. That is probably one of the cheaper and more useful ones. Power, I've had mixed results with Power. As it says, something weird might happen, you never really know. Blast is, I think, one of the most expensive ones. It basically shoots something from a distance. And Speed allows you to get around and be more dexterous for a while. But Heal is probably for a beginner probably the most useful one, because that allows you, because of the whole death is final thing, Heal is quite useful. Alright, so we're going to go into the main hall and kit our character out. So the first stop we're going to make is over into the store, and we'll pick up a weapon and some armor. And the disc is still spinning. Here we go. So you can go out with nothing. I don't advise that. You may, because if you do try to hit something, it's trying to hit you with your bare hands, and while you might hit something, it's not going to do that much damage. So let's go ahead and visit the weapon shop. All right, so we want to buy a weapon, so we'll go ahead and hit B. I'm a fan of the sword. Spoiler alert, the big prize at the end of the beginner's cave is a sword, so we'll go ahead and start with that. All right, so what you see here is we've started, I believe, with 200 gold, and he's got a very good one for 45, an average one for 23, and a shabby one for 11. I've seen the very good ones with a bad charisma score be all, well over 100, 125. So you get stuck with the fair one. So we're going to take the good ones since we need all the benefits we can get. All right, so armor. Yes, we're going to pick up some armor. And what you'll see is that the plate mail is a little out of our price range, but we can definitely get the chain mail. So go ahead and see for that. And sure, we'll get a shield. All right, so now that we have our equipment, just go look at our abilities. So here are everything that we know about our character. What you'll see is we have 18 gold left, so we've pretty much spent everything we can. To get an idea of how much the spells cost, we'll go back to the wizard. As you can see here, healing and power, well, power is the cheapest one. Again, what it does is always unknown. Heal is really the first one you really want, and then blast and speed are after that. But we'll do end for nothing. All right, so from here you could go to the banker and deposit money, but for the most part, the adventures we're going on, they don't have thieves that steal money from you. So we don't need to do that yet. So let's go on an adventure. What the system is doing now is it gives you the option to put a new disk in. So each of the Eamons is stored on its own disk. So if you've downloaded different ones, This is a point in the game when you pop this one out and pop that new one in. But because we're going to the beginner's cave and that is on this disk, we'll go ahead and just hit C and start it up. So the beginner's cave, I think, covers all of the things that you need to learn about the game, obviously including the whole death thing. But there's some interesting twists and turns here, so I won't spoil everything yet. But it does walk through the mechanics of walking through the dungeon, learning the descriptions, learning how to move around, what words and how to use them are, and then how to attack. So there is a bit of reading here, as with all text-based adventure games. But this is the check to see if you are actually a real beginner. So there's a marshal up front that says, yes, you can go in because you are an actual beginner. Once you've gone in here once, you basically can't go back in again unless you literally just did nothing. So we're at the entrance to the cave, and this is a north-south cave. And so you can go ahead and you can type in the word south, or you can actually just do S, so it does save you some time there. We're now in a tunnel, and we can see bright light back from where we came from. And then to the south, we can see some torches. So go ahead and go one more step south. If you were going to graph this on some handy-dandy graph paper, if you've ever played D&D, this looks quite familiar. You can, and that actually comes in quite handy for some of the more complex caves, because this won't tell you exactly where you are. So you kind of have to keep track of that in your head, which is kind of the fun to this, is that you get to think through and imagine what it would be like actually going through these caves. And because there is no imagery, you have to make your own. And so the use of imagination in games like this is some of their appeal. All right, so we can see we're in a cave, and we'll go ahead and go south again. Now here you'll see we've actually found some options. So there's something to the east and something to the west, the side chambers, or we could just keep going south. So let's go ahead and let's go east and see what happens. All right, so we've run into our first real non-player character. So it's an old hermit, and there is a bottle with some strange potions inside of it. There's a couple options here. One thing that's different than what we saw in Oregon Trail, which just kept going on in time. Time is not really a factor in this game. It's all turn-based. So if you want to think about this, go off, have some dinner, come back, nothing's going to change in the game state. So there's nothing that you need to do in speed through this. That will be different as we go into The Hobbit. The Hobbit gets back to time as a resource you need to manage. But for here, it's all turn-based, so you can take your time and think about it. You've got a couple options here. You could start hacking away at the old hermit. Or one thing I will do is if you walk into a room and there's a character that you don't know their intentions, you actually have the option to smile. All right, so if nothing happens, more likely than not, the person in there is friendly. And what they'll do is they'll actually just follow you around. So this is an easy way to pick up sidekicks and have them fight on your behalf. If, when we go into some of the later rooms, you walk in and do a smile, they'll start attacking you. So each time you do something, when you're in melee with another character or creature, if you look at your inventory, that's your turn. Or if you ready a different weapon, that's your turn and something can go ahead and try and hit you. So that's the one thing you'll need to keep out from a gameplay perspective, is that it is turn-based and you don't get any turns for free. So let's go ahead and take the bottle. Now I know that take is not a supported word, but at least want to show you what happens when you try. All right, so this is the full vocabulary that this Eamon knows. So get is the proper word. As you would see in The Hobbit and all the other ones, get, take, are all, and there's a bunch of other synonyms for those words, like pick up. They all are basically the same thing. So for here, the appropriate word is get. If you type in a word that's expecting something after it, it'll say that verb and then the word what. Actually, let's try potion, because it won't work. There's no potion here, but there is a bottle, and inside the bottle is a potion. So you have to get the bottle. And it will tell you exactly what you need to do right here on the screen. All right. You can go ahead and hit I for inventory. So as you can see, we have a bottle and a sword. Before you go into battle, what you may want to do is ready your sword, which is basically taking it out of its sheath and getting ready to hit something. So now if we do an inventory, you'll see that the sword is ready to go. All right, so we went east into this room, so you need to go west to go back out. Now we're in a large chamber. Now you kind of have to remember where and what you were, so we'll go into the next room. And this will be the first time we get to battle something. So you're in a small side chamber, and guess what? There's rats with sharp white teeth. So there's a black, a brown, and a tan. In many cases, you'd have to say black rat. So we swung when we missed. The black rat runs away. The brown rat swung. What we'll see is the hermit here is actually attacking on our behalf. So there are a brown rat and a tan rat still here. This room actually allows you just to say rat, and it will pick the first one on the list. So the brown rat, we swung at and missed, and it ran away. Now we're back with just the tan rat. As you can see, our character's ability to swing is pretty bad. But the hermit hit it on our behalf, and so there's now a dead rat. There's treasure in this room, so we'll go ahead and pick those up. And if we look at our inventory, you can now see that we've got diamonds, the bottle, and the sword. And a dead rat. Alright, so let's go back out in the main hall, and we'll probably find the other two rats. Alright. And the hermit again hit the rat. So I think we can go back and chase the rat if we really wanted to, but we already got the treasure out of that room, so we'll go ahead and go south. We found doors that are bolted shut, and in the dim light we can see that the hall keeps going further south, but you can't see what's going on. So like before, there are rooms to the east and the west. So let's go ahead and check out what is to the west. So again, here gets to some of Don Brown's dry humor. We found a warrior. He's holding a shield with a sticker that says, "Hi, I'm Heinrich." So you can say hi back. Again, Heinrich does nothing to you. So if Heinrich was on a worse disposition than he has towards us now, he might start swinging. But as it turns out, he's yet another NPC that we can follow. If we were to start swinging at him, the hermit, because he's friends of ours, would swing at Heinrich. But because our attack skill is so bad in this game, I think we'll just keep him as a henchman. So I think we went east to this room, so we'll go west. And if we can't, you can't go that way. And it will tell you which ways you can go. So the door's on the east side. And for the most part, all the maps are, the compass is north, south, east, and west. Unlike The Hobbit, which The Hobbit does have like northwest, southeast, etc. This game is pretty square, so it's not as hard to get lost. So now you can see that both the hermit and Heinrich are with us, so they will battle on our behalf as we go east into the next room. huge, hairy, strong, angry gorilla. All right, so there's 50 gold pieces here, so you can take them to begin with, but that is your turn, and the gorilla's going to start hitting you. So I always suggest go ahead attacking the creatures first, and then pick up the gold at the end. All right, so the hermit hit the gorilla, and the gorilla went after Heinrich, and he hit it. But Heinrich is still in good shape. There is no direct tracker of your life total, so that can be disconcerting. But there are some words and phrases that they use. So in good shape means you basically still have a whole bunch of health, don't worry about it. Then I believe the next one is like hurting, and then it's really hurting, and then in really bad shape, and there's another one, and then you're actually dead. So the words give you an idea of how far you are down on your life scale, so you don't get to actually see a number. It might be useful to see a number, but that's just the style of the game. All right, so the gorilla hit me, but did bounce off my armor, so that's good. I missed again. We're standing in the cell, nothing changed. Finally, I hit the gorilla, and you can see now that he was doing fine, and now he's very badly injured. So that means he's getting closer to death. The gorilla went after Heinrich, and Heinrich is hurting, so he's gone down in health. All right, gorilla hit gorilla, and he is at death's door, and it's knocking loudly. The hermit hit him; he's dead. So the three of us, as a team, were able to take down the gorilla. If you went through and didn't realize you could actually pick up NPC friendlies to help fight on your behalf, and went and fought against both the hermit as well as Heinrich, you may actually not even make it to the gorilla. But with them as friends, taking down the gorilla is pretty straightforward. So don't forget to take the gold on the way out. And look at our inventory quick, and you can see we've got the diamonds, the bottle, the gold coins, and the sword. We're in the east cell, so we're going to go west. And we'll keep on going south. And there are rooms east and west yet again. So we'll go ahead and go east. And there's nothing in this dark cell, so we'll go back out to the main hall and check out the cell on the other side. And there's nothing here either. All right, so we're back in the passage, and we'll continue our path south. Again, here's some of that dry humor. To your great shock, there are two doors to the east and west. Well, this is like the fourth time, so yeah, I am shocked. And let's see, let's go ahead and go east. Large chest in the center of the room. All right. Uh-oh. The chest has become a mimic. That's a problem, but what you can do is just start attacking it. So as you go through and play this game, you'll see it can get quite repetitive, especially in the Eamons that are of the hack and slash variety. So just going through the simple one, you can see, attacking and fighting things, go to the next room, attack, fight things, go to the next room. So it can get pretty old, which is why some of the Eamons later in the collection do go off in wild and crazy directions. That tries to get away with some of the repetitiveness, but that's just kind of what you get with the state of text-based adventure games back in 1980. All right, so we see a ring in a minute. Don't forget to take the ring. All right, so we're in the east cell, so we need to go west. And we'll check out the other room. And there's nothing here. So go back east to the main hall. And we're at the south end of that long passage, and I think there is a tunnel at the end. So we're out of a hall and now into a full-on tunnel. All right, so you can go to the east and west here. Let's go ahead and look where this blasted out door was. There's an old book here. We're going to come back and look at the book in a minute, because as you'll see, the book is quite interesting. So we'll go to the other side of the path, and now we're in an east-west tunnel. Top of the flight of stairs. All right, so now we get to do something, a new direction. The game also supports up and down, so we will go ahead and go down the stairs. And light is to the east, so we'll go east again. Still in an east-west tunnel. Hint of salt. All right, so we're almost to the end of this tunnel. A man with a beard and a brass ring. It must be a pirate. So he's got a very fancy sword. That's kind of like the goal of this mission, is to get his sword. A large pile of jewels, also kind of nice. But we're going to start attacking the pirate and see if we can get him. Hey, how about that? I had a critical hit and he's dead. And the flame of his sword also dies. A beautiful sword. All right, and on the blade is the name Troll's Fire. So I don't know if you happen to see, but on the list of vocabulary, bring that back up again. You'll see Troll's Fire is actually a word there. So you can just say this word because it's a legal word to say, but nothing happens. But let's go ahead and get Troll's Fire. So here we're actually getting the sword itself. And now we'll go ahead and say Troll's Fire and see what happens. So we set our sword on fire, and then in the process we set ourselves on fire. All right, we do have some jewels, so make sure we get the jewels before we leave. All right, so I think we came in from the east, so we'll go ahead and go back out west. Still going through the tunnel. We're at the bottom of the stairway, so we need to go up. Still go west. West. West will go back into the library. So let's read the book and see what happens. As you read the book, you feel a weird sensation overtake you and you die. So I've been through it before, so I wanted to let you know how this feels. That sucks. We just went through this whole adventure. We had some great NPCs around to help us. We'd captured all of the treasures in this maze. When you do leave an Eamon, if there are things that are specific to that space that you can't use elsewhere, you'll hit somebody on the way out that allows you to trade the things that you can't basically take out of there for gold. Then you can then use that gold to buy spells and do other things. So we've probably spent about a half hour going through here, and it's all for naught because we're going to head and hit any key. We have the master disc in already. And what you see is we are back at the very beginning of the game where you can create a brand new character. So that's that's the way this game works. That's one of those instant death traps that, you know, who wouldn't want to read a book? There might be a spell in there, or might be something interesting to find. So if it's something like that, and there's a few other ones where there's like, you know, weird inscriptions written on the wall, yeah, basically don't be reading anything. And even some like the potions you take can kill you. So that's the challenge with this game. But it is fun. You do get to use your imagination and enjoy the ability to, you know, you're typing a lot of words, but really get to experience what it's like to go through a text adventure. So that's it. Everything I'm going through. I've gone through 4 or 5 different Eamons. They're all kind of fun and interesting. Many of them are quite similar in that there are variations on a theme of just crawling through the dungeons, hitting stuff, and taking treasure. Some of them do have some puzzles you need to solve. The puzzles themselves are pretty rudimentary, but you know, the puzzles nonetheless. But that is the game Eamon. So again, thank you for joining us. Now that you've seen a couple of text-based adventures, what you'll see is as we get to The Hobbit, Zork, Planetfall, and then Hitchhikers, you'll see the vocabularies get a lot better, and the descriptions also get a lot more descriptive about what's really going on in the games. So I hope you enjoyed this trip through Eamon, and I hope you stick with us. We've got 2 games down, 999 more to go. So again, it's going to be a long time, but I hope you enjoy this edition of the original platformer. And until we talk again, game on.